You cannot have dialogue where one side puts conditions on the other, where you have to give up your sovereignty and your independence. You cannot have talks where one side demands you accept their agenda, and that is what the United States has been doing for years.
But despite the obstacles, the Cuban president says people remain resilient. He also stressed the importance of engaging with the younger generation in revolutionary Cuba.
I think it's necessary for the revolution. Fidel strongly believed in it. He went to universities when he wanted to discuss a problem. He had famous encounters at the Cadenas Plaza at the Havana University during the first years of the revolution. For me, it has been necessary, since I was a youth leader and when I was party secretary in 2 provinces, and when I was Minister of Higher Education. That need to talk to the youth that has so much to contribute and freshen up. To know about their aspirations, their willingness to participate and propose things. That communication is a 3rd pillar that should be part of the new figures. The 4th pillar is that those of us in leadership should know that the answers to our problems are very complex. So we can't talk about one alternative. We always have to find several alternative solutions. Fidel also subscribed to that concept, and the only way to be more effective is to turn to scientific research and innovation. Because many times we investigate but don't nail it down, and that, used as a tool to solve problems, can be used by all leaders to defend their actions.
The government of Guatemala has reaffirmed its decision to ban the head of the International Commission Against Impunity from the country. This comes after the Constitutional Court unanimously overruled President Jimmy Morales' decision to ban him from entering Guatemala. Just over 2 weeks ago, Morales expelled the UN mission that was investigating him for alleged corruption. The decision prompted several protests. The Secretary General of the Organization of American States, Luis Almagro, has downplayed a military option against Venezuela. During a visit to Colombia, Almagro said a military intervention against the Bolivarian country should not be ruled out. But now, the OAS Secretary General says that democracy and diplomacy are the keys to resolving the Venezuelan crisis. He added his words were misinterpreted.
The take on what we talk about was of a violent military attack, that we favored armed aggression. That is not true. After years of defending democratic principles and human rights, it would be infantile from my part to talk of such a provocation and to get involved with such an interpretation.
Thousands of people gathered in Sao Paulo to demand former President Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva be freed from jail. More in this report.
People were indeed merry. They danced and sang together with local musicians. However, their party-like antics have a political side. They took to the streets to demand the release of Lula da Silva after 5 months of imprisonment.
It is important to use art for reivindicating our rights because they are taken away from us, even the right of making art. The coup that happened in Brazil was absolutely misogynist. It was against women in presidency, and now we are resisting and re-existing.
Free Lula's festival has taken place exactly 3 weeks before presidential elections of 7th October. This is the atmosphere right now in Avenida Paulista. Neither the prospect of being fined by Sao Paulo's mayor or the threat of violence could hold back the determination of the Brazilian people who marched to Paulista Avenue.
Fascism wants to take over the country, and we should take care to keep it away from the population. We need culture and art. That's the solution for our country, and not weapons.
Fernando Haddad, a presidential candidate of the Workers' Party, also took part in the festival. Notably, Paulista Avenue was turned into a strictly pedestrian-only zone with a cycle lane, so it should come as no surprise that the festival took place here.
Actually, we did have a candidate who could have won in the first round, but because he was disqualified, we have Lula's candidate. He made Lula's program belonged to his team. He is Fernando Haddad. Our job from now until October 7th is to turn Lula's votes into Haddad's votes.
A few days after his candidacy was announced, public opinion surveys show Fernando Haddad is in second in popularity, and in first place when the people know that he is Lula's candidate.
And And meanwhile, the Workers' Party presidential candidate Fernando Haddad has vowed to put an end to the neoliberal policies promoted by the current government. He made the announcement while on the campaign trail. Haddad visited the eastern state of Bahia along with his vice presidential running mate, Manuela de Ávila. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us.
The Pakistani journalist Tariq Ali examines the mass media influence promoted by imperialism. Get access to the analysis of the socio-economic and political life of the whole South America on our screen and platform in English. A critical place committed to the truth to determine the major events that transform the world today. Mondays, only on Telesur. With developing events being presented through analysis. Our coverage transcends borders. With renowned journalist Walter Martinez.
Salud amigos, tripulantes de nuestra querida, contaminada y única nave espacial.
Dossier. Weekdays. Only on Telesur.
Y ponga usted las cámaras, señor director.
Welcome back. 1 year after Mexico's earthquake, residents of collapsed buildings are still homeless. Several victims are living in tents. They are urging the authorities to help them return to their homes. The earthquake killed over 350 people and flattened dozens of buildings in Mexico City.
It's been very hard on us. First, because we still don't have a building solution, so it's been a bit hard.
It's been very tough, seriously very tough, but I haven't had recurring dreams curiously. However, it's been very, very terribly hard.
Mexico's president-elect Andrés Manuel López Obrador has promised to roll out social programs for the elderly and indigenous people. AMLO also said that he has students' best interests at heart. Credit schemes to promote economic development are also high on his priority list. He made these announcements at a meeting in the state of Nayarit during Independence Day celebrations.
There are going to be changes. There will be changes. And look, I will not disappoint you. I will not. And anytime there's a difficult situation, I will be present and I will talk to you. I'm sure you will understand me because I will never ever make a decision that negatively affects the people of Mexico. Never, ever. I will always act in good faith and with justice. We must all seek the transformation of the country.
And President Enrique Peña Nieto has presided over his last military parade in Mexico at a time when there are questions about the role the armed forces are playing in domestic security.
In the biggest military parade in Mexico, the Army, Marines and Air Forces present their arms to the President and citizens who attend the parade in the center of the capital. But it's not all cheers. The use of the armed forces has been questioned all the way back to the days when former President Felipe Calderon ordered the soldiers to start the war against narcos, a war.
All politicians know how to solve it, but it's difficult for them to solve it politically.
Civil society organisations look to the new government to change this national security strategy. Critics say it is giving impunity to army forces to violate human rights.
Morena has always been on the side of fighting security without war. He has asked for the constitution to be applied.
The president-elect has said the army and the Marines will continue as normal for now. The Secretary of National Security says it is a temporary measure until forces are regularised.
Former trade union leaders at Ford in Argentina are suing the company's former bosses over torture. They say they were detained in the company's factory and tortured by members of the military dictatorship 4 decades ago. The union leaders were held prisoners for 2 years. They say the former executives were complicit in the 1976 coup d'etat and the 7-year-long military dictatorship.
We were taken away in the worst way. We were held for 40 and 60 days, a year under national executive power and enduring all kinds of torture.
We are the voice of those who will not and perhaps never will see justice for the 30,000 people who disappeared as well.
They fought on opposite sides during Colombia's internal conflict, but love has brought them together for life. 6 former FARC guerrilla combatants and right-wing parliamentary members got married in a joint mass ceremony. The event was part of a campaign to promote former fighters' reintegration into society. The ceremony took place in the country's capital, Bogotá. Bolivia's President Evo Morales has asked Chile for calm as the nation awaits a ruling regarding their maritime dispute. Morales also asked Chilean President Sebastián Piñera to find an understanding in the dispute. He also said, quote, "The wounds opened more than 100 years ago should be closed." The International Court of Justice in The Hague is expected to rule on the case. Chile's President Sebastián Piñera has said his country is willing to talk, but he insists that a 1904 treaty should be respected since it's the answer to the maritime dispute. The treaty was signed to put an end to the tensions between the two countries, defining their current borders. And Bolivia continues to lead the charge for de-dollarization, a move against the power of the US dollar.
Bolivia remains the leader in the de-dollarization on the South American continent, with figures nearing 100% of the national currency used for savings and transactions, according to the first semester economic report from the central bank.
We can proudly say that at this time, more than 98% of bank loans are made in our national currency, and more than 87% of deposits in savings accounts are also made up of Bolivianos. This is something that no other country in Latin America has achieved before.
A decisive factor in maintaining economic stability and a strong national currency is that exchange rates have remained under control. The dollar has cost 6 bolivianos with 96 cents for the past 7 years.
Más del 98%.
Achieving and maintaining stability in currency exchange is one of the requirements for economic strength.
The stability of the national currency, the boliviano, contributes to people's confidence.
While other economies have dollarization levels in the 50 to 60% range, Bolivia records nearly 0%, after suffering through dollarization levels of nearly 100% back in 2004.
These factors have made it possible to strengthen the economy. It is expected to be one of the fastest growing in the region, growing 4.4% this year alone.
We have registered the lowest inflation rate in South America. High growth and low inflation is a very difficult combination to achieve. But data from August shows that credit disbursed through the financial system to the population is the highest ever.
Another outstanding fact about the financial sector is its ability to maintain low interest rates. The interest rate at the Bolivian Central Bank is a mere 0.5%.
Haiti's Prime Minister Jean-Henri Sant and his cabinet have been sworn in. The new government was ratified with 84 votes in favor, 5 against, and 4 abstentions. On Twitter, Sant asked Haitians to join forces for the happiness of the country. But the announcement of a new cabinet has fueled protests in the capital, Port-au-Prince. Fiery demonstrations erupted on Sunday following the ratification of Sant as prime minister. Protesters burned tires, blocked major roads, and vandalized properties. Special forces had to be called in to quell escalating tensions. The Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Keith Rowley, will visit Guyana on Wednesday to sign a memorandum of understanding on energy cooperation. The memorandum is controversial because Guyana's private sector has warned the government against entering any arrangement that could be disadvantageous to local business, especially as Guyana's energy industry is rapidly developing.
To Dominica.
A 1,500-year-old Mayan altar has been unveiled in Guatemala. The piece was found in a small archaeological site north of the country. The altar also has an inscription in Mayan hieroglyphics. Evidence shows a political movement was formed to rule the Mayan lowlands in the southeast of Mesoamerica. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us.
Telesur brings you special interviews with social and political personalities. Monday, from Washington. Tuesday, from Mexico. Wednesday, from Caracas. Thursday, from Quito. Friday, from Havana. Analysis about our continent's reality. Weekdays, only on Telesur. An occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along to find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real Lives. Saturdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Russia and Turkey have agreed to create a buffer zone in Syria's Idlib. Presidents Vladimir Putin and Recep Tayyip Erdogan reached an agreement to separate Syrian government troops from rebel forces in part of the Syrian province. All heavy weapons will be also withdrawn from the area. The demilitarized zone will come into force by October 15th.
We both agree that implementation of the planned steps will give a new momentum to the process of resolving of the Syrian conflict politically, allowing us to intensify work on the Geneva platform, and that will contribute to peace returning to Syrian soil.
Together we will ensure the detection and the prevention of provocations by third parties and violations of the agreement. With this aim, Russia and Turkey will carry out coordinated patrols on the borders on both sides of the demilitarized zone, which will be designated.
The Congress of South African Trade Unions could elect its first woman president during its 13th meeting. Commissioners will also decide whether to continue supporting the African National Congress. The Congress of South African Trade Unions is taking place in Johannesburg. President Cyril Ramaphosa spoke at the opening.
The resolution of the 54th Conference of the ANC decided that there should be expropriation of land without compensation, and this should take place without any fail. And it is going to happen, because that is a decision of our conference. We want to utilize this as one of the comprehensive measures to accelerate land reform that will reduce poverty, that will strengthen the economy and increase agricultural output. And for those who think that this program of land reform means that we are going to give land to the elite, I want to make it very clear that our land reform program is not about giving land to the elite. It is about giving land to the ordinary people in our country and not the chosen few. So we will be seeking then to focus attention on ensuring that we improve agriculture, focus on agriculture, and enable our people, our compatriots who are involved in agriculture, particularly emerging farmers, are able to get the support that they need.
Floods in Nigeria have killed over 100 people. Heavy rains have also forced thousands to flee their homes. The center of the country has been the most affected. Their two major rivers have burst their banks. Government is urging residents to relocate to safe places. The International Criminal Court has sentenced former Vice President Jean-Pierre Bemba to 1 year in prison for witness tampering. Bemba and 5 others were found guilty of bribing witnesses during their war crime trial. He was acquitted of war crimes on appeal in June. The politician was barred from standing in December's presidential election. Demonstrators have blocked roads and shut down businesses in Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa. They are angry for the killing of 23 people in the outskirts of the city over the weekend. Protesters are challenging Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, who was undertaking aggressive reforms regarding security. They are urging the government to stop violence. The Palestinian teenage activist Ahed Tamimi has spoken at the Humanity celebration in France. She referred to Palestinian refugees and the occupation of her homeland. Tamimi became a symbol of the Palestinian resistance after she was arrested for slapping an Israeli soldier. She was released 2 months ago after serving 8 months. North and South Korean officials are holding meetings ahead of the Inter-Korean Summit this Tuesday. South Korean President Moon Jae-in will meet North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in an attempt to normalize relations in the peninsula. Moon will go to the north for a third meeting. Denuclearization will be the main topic in the agenda. Our correspondent Isara Diaz tells us more.
Everything is ready for the third Inter-Korean Summit, a historic summit between the South Korean President Moon Jae-in and the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. This summit will take place in North Korea's capital, Pyongyang. According to South Korean sources, denuclearization will be the main topic in the agenda. The South Korean president will leave his country this Tuesday morning and should arrive to North Korea at 10 a.m. local time. But his first meeting with Kim will not take place until the afternoon. Afterwards, there will be an official welcome dinner. Moon Jae-in has 3 main goals. The first one, developing and improving the inter-Korean relationship. He also wants to promote dialogue between North Korea and the US. And finally, he wants to debate on how to reduce tensions in the peninsula and to avoid any attempt of a possible war. A group of over 90 people travelled to North Korea to prepare the summit. This is taking place now that Washington has said it will not recognise the armistice signed between the two Koreas. Let's recall that the war in the Korean peninsula for some continues as an armistice was signed instead of a peace agreement. This agreement is one of the requests made by North Korea to move forward in debating the rest of the topics.
Thank you, Sara, for your report. And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And also join us on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.